By the time the wedding week arrived, I had started to believe I was one of the lucky ones. I own my own home surveillance company in Charlotte, and after years of 14-hour days, missed holidays, and more bad contracts than I wanted to remember, the business was finally doing what I had always promised myself it would do. We had steady commercial accounts, a clean reputation, and enough recurring income that I no longer woke up at 3 in the morning calculating payroll in my head. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something I had to wrestle into place. It felt built. And when I came home at night, Laura was there. That was the part that made everything feel real. She had this calm way about her that made a room seem settled the moment she stepped into it. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. She remembered the little things without making a performance out of it. How I like my coffee strong enough to taste burnt. How I always forgot to eat when I got buried in estimates and install schedules. How I hated unnecessary noise after a long day. She made ordinary life feel dependable, and after enough years around people who confused chaos with passion, that felt rarer than love itself. Then there was Mason. Every evening, he came running the second he heard the front door open, sneakers slapping across the hardwood, usually with one sock half off and some toy clutched in his hand like he had been waiting all day to show me something important. A plastic dinosaur. A bent crayon drawing. A block tower, he swore, I wasn't allowed to touch. I would drop my keys in the bowl by the entryway, crouch down, and let him collide into me with his full weight. That kind of trust changes a man. I started measuring my life differently after that. Not by revenue. Not by contracts won. By school pickup times, grocery lists on the fridge, little fingerprints on the glass patio door, and the soft yellow light under Mason's bedroom door after Laura finished reading to him at night. A few days before the wedding, our house was full of folded decorations, unopened boxes, ribbon, guest lists, and the kind of low, happy stress that comes with believing you are about to step into the life you were meant to have. Laura moved through it all with that same warm steadiness. I watched her from the kitchen one night while she stood at the counter in one of my old t-shirts, writing down last-minute things we still needed, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is the safe part. This is what all the hard years were for. I didn't know then how dangerous it is when a lie begins to look exactly like peace. I had known Laura long before I ever imagined building a life with her. We met more than 10 years earlier at a 4th of July cookout outside Nashville. I still remember the heat rising off the grass, the smell of lighter fluid and grilled meat hanging in the air, and Laura standing near the folding table with a paper plate in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. She wasn't trying to be the center of anything. She was just there, talking to people in that easy, unforced way she had, smiling without pushing too hard. At the time, I noticed her the way you notice someone solid. Someone who seems comfortable in their own skin. Nothing happened then. We drifted in and out of the same circles over the years. Birthdays, barbecues, the occasional holiday party, random messages when somebody got engaged or moved or had a bad breakup. There was never some big spark people write songs about. No reckless night. No dramatic confession. Just familiarity. She became one of those names in my phone that felt permanent, someone I could go months without seeing and still pick up with like no time had passed. Maybe that was why I trusted her so easily later. Back then, my life was mostly work. I was moving between cities, chasing contracts, trying to turn a small installation business into something that could actually last. Laura had her own life too, steady in ways mine never really was. When we talked, it was usually simple. She'd ask how business was. I'd ask how work was treating her. Sometimes we'd laugh about people we used to know, the ones who made too much noise online and disappeared the second life got real. It stayed like that for years. Safe. Familiar. Clean. Then life started pressing on both of us at the same time. I was burned out and spending more nights alone than I wanted to admit. The kind of alone that doesn't feel peaceful, just quiet in a way that makes every room sound bigger. Laura was going through her own rough stretch, though she only let pieces of it show at first. A canceled plan here. A slower reply there. A tired look in her face the last time I saw her in person. That was when the tone between us changed. Not all at once. Nothing obvious. Just longer conversations. Later calls. More honesty slipping into the gaps between ordinary words. I started noticing how different her voice sounded when she was exhausted, softer and lower, like she was too tired to pretend everything was fine. She started asking about more than work. I started answering with more than the cleaned-up version. Somewhere in that season, the line between old friend and something more stopped being clear. Neither of us said it yet, but I think we both felt it coming. The night everything changed didn't feel dramatic at first. It was raining hard in Atlanta, the kind of steady, heavy rain that turns the streets into mirrors and makes every passing car sound louder than it should. I had just gotten back to my townhouse, dropped my keys on the kitchen counter, and was halfway through loosening my tie when my phone buzzed. It was Laura. "Can I come over?" No explanation. No small talk. I looked at the message for a few seconds longer than I needed to. Then I typed back, "Yeah, of course." She showed up about 30 minutes later, hair damp from the rain, mascara slightly smudged under her eyes. Not messy. Not falling apart. Just worn down in a way that didn't match the version of her I was used to seeing. I opened the door before she even knocked.
"Hey," I said.
She gave a small nod, stepping inside, slipping off her shoes by the door like she'd been there 100 times before, even though she hadn't. "What happened?" She didn't answer right away. Just walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, staring at nothing. I grabbed a towel from the hallway closet and handed it to her. She took it, pressed it lightly against her hair, then finally exhaled. "It's work," she said quietly. "My supervisor, he embarrassed me in front of everyone today." I didn't interrupt. She started talking, slow at first, then more steadily, about the dental office, about how something small had turned into a public lecture, how he questioned her competence in front of patients, how everyone just stood there, pretending not to hear. The kind of humiliation that doesn't leave marks, but sticks under your skin. I leaned back in the chair across from her, listening. Every now and then I asked something simple. "What did you say? Did anyone step in?" Just enough to keep her talking. Hours passed like that. The rain kept hitting the windows, steady and relentless. At some point I got up, made coffee neither of us really drank, and came back. She didn't cry. That's what stayed with me. She held everything together, even while she was breaking down piece by piece in front of me. Her voice would tighten for a second, then level out again like she was forcing control back into place. "You didn't deserve that," I said at one point. She looked at me, then really looked. "I know," she replied. "I just didn't want to be alone tonight." Something in the way she said it landed heavier than everything else. The room felt smaller after that. Closer. We stopped talking for a while. Just sat there, the rain filling the silence. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the quiet rhythm of her breathing slowly evening out. Then she shifted slightly, closer to me on the couch. Not a big movement. Just enough. I remember thinking this is the moment where things either stay the same or they don't. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. What started as comfort between two old friends changed right there, in that quiet, rain-soaked living room, without any announcement, without any plan. And once it shifted, there was no going back to what we were before. A few months later, she told me she was pregnant. There was no build-up, no long conversation leading into it. Just a quiet Tuesday evening, late enough that the house felt still. We were sitting at my kitchen table, takeout containers pushed off to the side, the faint smell of soy sauce and fried rice still in the air. She had been quieter than usual all night, answering questions with short sentences, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass like she was trying to stay grounded. "I need to tell you something," she said. I looked up from my phone and set it face down on the table. "Okay." She held my gaze for a second, then said it. "I'm pregnant." The words didn't hit all at once. They settled slowly, like weight pressing down instead of crashing in. I remember leaning back in my chair slightly, my mind trying to catch up to what she had just said, running through timelines without fully forming them. "How far along?" I asked. "About 8 weeks." I nodded once, more to give myself a second than anything else. There are moments where people expect panic, raised voices, questions fired too fast. But that's not how it felt. It was quieter than that.
heavier.
I stood up, walked to the sink, and turned on the water, letting it run longer than necessary. I wasn't cleaning anything,
Just listening to the sound, buying time.
behind me. I could feel her watching, waiting. "You okay?" she asked carefully. I turned the water off and dried my hands slowly on a towel. "Yeah," I said. "I just didn't expect it. That makes two of us." There was a pause. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she added, her voice steady but lower now. "I'll figure it out." That sentence hung in the air. I turned back to face her. She wasn't crying, wasn't asking for anything, just sitting there, shoulders straight, like she had already prepared herself to carry whatever came next alone if she had to. And that's what decided it for me. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Her expression shifted, just slightly. Not relief, exactly. Something more controlled. "You sure?" she asked. I nodded.
We'll figure it out, I said. Together.
The word felt deliberate coming out of my mouth.
Together.
That night, everything rearranged itself without noise. Plans I hadn't made yet disappeared. New ones formed in their place. I started thinking in terms of responsibility instead of possibility, stability instead of freedom. And the strange part was it didn't feel wrong. Unexpected, yes. Fast, definitely. But not wrong. If anything, it felt like life had made the decision for me, and all I had to do was step into it. I didn't question it. I didn't look too closely at the details. I just accepted the version of the future she placed in front of me and started building around it. When Owen was born, everything else in my life adjusted around him without resistance. It was early autumn, the kind of morning where the air feels clean and sharp, and the light comes in softer through the hospital windows. I remember standing beside Laura's bed, the faint smell of antiseptic in the room, machines humming quietly, nurses moving in and out with calm efficiency. Then I heard him, a short, sharp cry that cut through everything. They handed him to Laura first. She looked down at him with that same composed expression she always had, but there was something different behind it now. Something deeper. I stepped closer, watching, not saying anything. "Do you want to hold him?" she asked after a moment. I nodded. When they placed him in my arms, he felt smaller than I expected. Warmer too. His hand moved slightly, fingers curling without purpose, and for a second I just stood there looking at him, trying to understand how something that small could shift the weight of my entire life in an instant. "Hey," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. That was it. No speech. No promises out loud. But something locked into place inside me right then. From that point on, I stopped thinking in terms of if. Everything became how. How to grow the business faster. How to structure my time better. How to make sure there was always enough. Enough money. Enough stability. Enough presence. I expanded the company within months. Took on larger contracts. Hired 2 more technicians. Started pushing into commercial systems instead of just residential installs. It meant longer days again, but this time it felt different. Focused. At home, everything revolved around Owen. Late nights weren't spent worrying about invoices anymore. They were spent walking the living room in slow circles, holding him against my shoulder while he fought sleep. Early mornings meant bottles warming in the kitchen, soft footsteps, low light. I learned the exact rhythm of his breathing when he finally settled, the small sounds he made right before he woke up. Laura adjusted into motherhood with that same steady control she had always shown. She didn't complain, didn't dramatize anything. She handled things quietly, efficiently, like she had been preparing for it longer than I realized. And I filled in everything around that. I never questioned my place in it. When people asked, I said, "My son," without hesitation. At work, in conversations, on paperwork. It wasn't something I had to think about. It just came naturally, like the word had always belonged there. Looking back, there were details I didn't examine closely enough. Timing that I accepted without double-checking. Small inconsistencies that didn't seem important at the time. But when you're holding a child in your arms at 2 in the morning, none of that feels relevant. All that matters is that he trusts you to be there. And I was. Completely. That was the part that made everything else so easy to believe. By the time Owen turned 2, proposing felt less like a question and more like a step that was already overdue. I chose a lake cabin outside Knoxville. Quiet place. Wood walls, wide porch, the kind of still water that reflects everything back at you without distortion. No crowd. No audience. Just something controlled. Predictable. We went up on a Friday afternoon. Owen fell asleep halfway through the drive, his head tilted to the side, one shoe already off. Laura sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through something on her phone, occasionally glancing out the window. Nothing unusual. Nothing that suggested anything was off. That weekend felt stable. We cooked simple meals. Walked along the edge of the water. Let Owen run himself tired chasing nothing in particular. At night, after we put him down, we sat on the porch with the lights off, listening to the soft movement of the lake against the dock. I proposed the second night. No speech. I just reached into my jacket pocket, took out the ring, and held it out between us. Let's make it official, I said. She looked at the ring for a second longer than I expected. Not hesitation exactly. Just calculation. Then she smiled. Yes. Simple.
Clean.
She leaned forward, kissed me once, light and controlled. When I slid the ring onto her finger, her hand was steady. Everything about it felt right. Or at least it looked right. The wedding plans moved fast after that. Faster than I would have normally preferred, but Laura insisted it made sense. Less time, less stress. Keep it tight. Keep it efficient. I didn't argue. The house in Charlotte started filling up within days. Boxes stacked near the dining room wall. Fabric samples draped over chairs. Lists taped to the refrigerator. Schedules written out in her neat handwriting. Everything timed down to the hour. A week before the wedding, her cousin Denise arrived. Older than Laura by a few years. Sharper edges. The kind of person who looks like she's always measuring the room, even when she's smiling. She brought energy into the house, moved things around, took control of decorations, food planning, seating arrangements. Someone has to keep this organized, she said the first night, already rearranging items on the kitchen counter. Laura laughed it off. I watched. The house felt fuller with her there. Louder. More movement. More voices. Late-night conversations in the living room while I finished emails in the office down the hall. Everything looked like progress. Like momentum. 2 days before the ceremony, I left early that morning to meet a vendor about some last-minute security setup for the venue. It was supposed to be quick. In and out. Back before lunch. That's what I told Laura before I walked out the door. Don't take too long, she said, barely looking up from the table covered in invitations and ribbons. I won't. At that point, I still believed I was walking toward the life I had built. I didn't realize I was about to walk back into it at exactly the wrong moment. I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The meeting wrapped faster than expected, and a highway accident forced me off my usual route. I took a back road without thinking much about it, just wanting to get home, grab my laptop, and finish a few things before the evening got busy again. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked normal. No cars out of place. No signs of anything unusual. Inside, it was quiet in that mid-afternoon way. No TV. No music. Just a faint murmur of voices somewhere deeper in the house. I stepped in through the side patio door, closing it gently behind me. My shoes barely made a sound on the tile. I was about to call out when I heard Laura's voice. Sharp. Lower your voice. I stopped. Denise answered, her tone tighter, less controlled than usual. I told you this would catch up to you. I didn't move. The hallway light was off. I stood there, just out of view of the living room, listening without meaning to at first, then very much meaning to. You said it didn't matter, Denise continued. You said he didn't need to know. He doesn't, Laura replied quickly. Not now. A pause. My hand tightened slightly around my keys. Not now, Denise said. You're marrying him in 2 days. Another silence. Heavier this time. Then Denise said it. And what happens when he finds out Owen isn't his? Everything in me went still. Not shock. Not panic. Just silence. I didn't step forward. Didn't make a sound. I stayed exactly where I was, like moving even an inch would break something I needed to hear completely. Laura exhaled slowly.
He's his father, she said.
That's what matters. That's not what I asked, Denise snapped. You let him believe that from the beginning. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. There was a sharp sound, like something being set down too hard on the table. You don't understand, Laura said, her voice lower now, controlled again. If I told him back then, he would have walked away. And now, he won't. That confidence that sat wrong. Denise didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice dropped. You're betting everything on that. I know him, Laura said. Another pause. Then quieter, almost like a warning. You think you do. I stood there, still in the shadows of my own hallway, the keys cold in my hand. My mind didn't race. It slowed down. Details started rearranging themselves without effort. Timelines. Conversations. Things I had accepted without question. The kind of small inconsistencies you ignore when you trust someone completely. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just clarity. Careful, quiet clarity. I stepped back as silently as I'd come in, opened the patio door, and closed it again with the same soft click. Neither of them noticed I had been there, and I decided right then they would know. Not until I was ready. I didn't confront her that day. I didn't even let it show. When I walked back in through the front door 20 minutes later, I made sure my steps were a little louder. I set my keys down harder than usual, gave them time to hear me. Hey, I called out. Laura appeared from the kitchen, expression smooth, exactly the way it always was. You're back early.
Yeah.
Wrapped up faster than I thought. Denise stood behind her, arms crossed loosely, studying me for half a second longer than necessary. If she suspected anything, she didn't show it. Good, Laura said. We still have a lot to finish. I nodded. Yeah, I replied. We do. From that moment on, everything I did had a purpose. That night, after they went to bed, I sat alone in my office with the lights off, the glow of my laptop reflecting faintly against the glass of the window. I didn't rush. I didn't spiral. I started with the simplest thing. Timeline.
Dates.
Messages. Old emails. Photos. I pulled up everything from that period. When she said she found out. When we had that conversation at the kitchen table. When Owen was born. I laid it all out, piece by piece, like I was reviewing a job site. And there it was. Small gaps. Nothing obvious unless you were looking for it. But I was. The numbers didn't sit clean. They overlapped in a way that didn't match the story she gave me back then. Close enough to pass. Not close enough to be true. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Not anger. Just confirmation that I wasn't imagining it. The next morning I made a call. Private clinic. Chattanooga. No questions asked as long as you paid up front. I need a paternity test, I said. They explained the process.
Swabs.
Discretion. Fast turnaround if I was willing to pay extra. I told them. 2 days later, I made the trip alone. I told Laura I had a vendor issue out of town. She didn't question it. Why would she? The clinic was quiet. Neutral walls. No unnecessary conversation. They handed me the kit, walked me through it, and that was it. Clinical.
Detached.
I followed every step carefully. No mistakes. On the drive back, I kept the radio off. I wasn't thinking about what I would do if it came back negative. I was thinking about timing. The results were scheduled to arrive the morning of the rehearsal dinner. I didn't change anything about the wedding plans. Didn't pull back. Didn't confront her. I let everything continue exactly as it was supposed to. Because by then, this wasn't about finding out the truth. It was about deciding what to do with it. The results came in at 9:12 a.m. I was sitting alone in the kitchen, still in yesterday's clothes, a cup of coffee untouched in front of me. The house was quiet. Laura and Denise had already left for the hotel, where she was getting ready for the rehearsal dinner. My phone buzzed once. Email. No subject line beyond a reference number. I opened it immediately. No hesitation. No build-up. Just a document.
Clear.
Clinical. Final. Probability of paternity. 0%. I read it once. Then again. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to make sure there was no room for interpretation. No error. No ambiguity. There wasn't. I locked my phone and set it down carefully on the table. For a few seconds, I just sat there, listening to the silence of the house. The same house that had felt full a week ago now sounded empty in a way I hadn't noticed before. Then I stood up and started making calls. The venue in Asheville was first. "This is Brandon Hayes," I said. "I need to cancel today's event." There was a pause on the other end. Confusion. Questions. "I understand there are policies," I continued calmly. "I'll cover whatever fees are necessary. But the event is not happening." Next was the caterer. Then the decorator. Then the rental company. Each conversation was the same.
Short.
Controlled. No explanations beyond what was necessary. By the time I was done, there was no wedding left to attend. Then I drove to the hotel. The bridal suite was on the 4th floor. I remember the carpet pattern in the hallway, the muted colors, the soft lighting. Everything designed to feel comfortable. I knocked once. Voices inside. Movement. Then the door opened. Laura stood there in a white robe, her hair half done, makeup partially finished. For a second, she smiled automatically. "Hey." She stopped when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" I stepped inside without answering. Denise was near the window, arms folded, already watching me like she had been expecting this. I closed the door behind me. "We're not having the wedding," I said. Silence. Laura blinked, processing. "What do you mean?" I pulled my phone out, opened the email, and held it out to her. "Read it." She hesitated, then took it. Her eyes moved across the screen, slowly at first, then faster, then stopping completely. The color drained from her face. "Brandon," I didn't raise my voice. "Is there anything in that report that's wrong?" She didn't answer immediately. Denise looked away. Laura swallowed. "No." The word was quiet, barely there.
"You knew," I said.
It wasn't a question. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like something finally gave out. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "Back then, I thought if I said anything, you'd leave. So, you decided for me. I was trying to keep us together. By lying." Tears started forming, but her voice stayed controlled. I was scared. I nodded once. "I know." That was the last calm thing I said. "Everything is canceled," I continued. "The venue, the catering, all of it." Her head snapped up. "What?" "It's over." The room shifted, not loudly, but completely. "You're just ending it?" she asked, her voice breaking for the first time. "I already did." I turned toward the door. "Brandon," she started. I paused, but didn't look back. "For what it's worth," I said, "I would have stayed." That was the truth. And it landed harder than anything else. Then I walked out, leaving everything else behind in that room. I thought walking away would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I was served papers. Laura was filing for financial support. Not emotional. Not personal. Legal. Her argument was simple. I had acted as Owen's father for years. I had provided. I had signed documents. I had built a life around that role. Biology didn't matter anymore, not in the way the law sometimes sees it. At first, the court agreed. I sat there in a gray room that smelled faintly like paper and old carpet, listening to someone explain my own life back to me like it was a contract I had signed without reading. They used words like established responsibility and best interest of the child. I didn't argue in that moment. I just listened. Then I appealed. This time, I didn't rely on assumptions. I brought everything. The DNA results, the timelines, messages, evidence that the truth had been hidden intentionally from the beginning. Not confusion. Not a mistake. A decision. My lawyer kept it tight, focused. No emotion in the presentation. Just facts lined up in order the way I had learned to build systems in my own business. The second hearing felt different. Quieter. More precise. And when the decision came back, it was final. No legal obligation. No enforced support. Clean separation. On paper, I was free. But paper doesn't carry weight the same way memory does. For a long time, The house stayed empty. I sold it eventually. Moved to Raleigh. Smaller place.
Cleaner lines.
Less history in the walls. I rebuilt the business there, piece by piece, the same way I had done it the first time, but sharper now. More selective. More controlled. I stopped trusting easily.
Not in a loud way.
Just quietly. Measured. People noticed it, even if they didn't say it. Sometimes, late at night, I would still catch myself thinking about Owen. The way he used to run to the door. The weight of him falling asleep on my shoulder. The small details that didn't disappear just because the truth changed. That part stayed real. That's what made it complicated. I didn't regret leaving. I didn't question the decision. But I understood something I hadn't before. You can do everything right, build something stable, give it your full attention, and still have it taken apart by a lie that was there from the beginning. Now, I don't look for guarantees. I look for consistency. And if something feels even slightly off, I don't ignore it anymore.